But tonight I'm here to talk about the history of skiing in New York State. It's a rich and beautiful history, and it's really bookended by two sets of Olympics. A lot of people are aware that New York hosted the 1980 Olympics, the Miracle on Ice, the whole big event there. But New York State also in Lake Placid hosted the third Winter Olympics back in 1932. And back then there was only four ski related events. By show of hands in the room, how many of you guys are into winter sports? Some kind. Cool. Out of those, keep those hands up. Out of how many of those are into cross country skiing? Yeah, not too many, not as popular. What about how many of you are actively into practice the ski jump? Yeah, that's what I thought. So those in 1932, that was it. Those were the ski events at the Olympics. Compared to what it is now, like that's all it was. So any ideas why downhill skiing wasn't really a big part of the Olympics back then? Wasn't popular, mainstream? Any guesses?
We didn't have a team.
What's up?
We didn't have much of a team.
Nobody had a team. There was, 1932, there was 17 countries competing. During that time, the second ever downhill alpine skiing event was taking place in Italy at the same time, but there was only, I think, 4 countries competing then, and a couple individuals. Yeah, but it wasn't popular, but there was a number of factors leading to it. Any other guesses?
Safety.
That's one of them. Safety was a big issue on all the events. So ski jump in the 1932 Olympics, there was no helmets. Almost nobody stuck the landings. But if you stuck a landing, there was a good chance you were going to get a medal. People took off or flailed their arms. Like that was one of the techniques. It looked like little kids jumping off like a roof or something. No helmets. There was no equipment. The equipment was incredibly rudimentary. Skis were basically tied on, or they were definitely wood. There was really no advanced equipment. But a number of other reasons. One, logistically, the mountains are far. Cars still weren't that accessible, so it was basically just trains, that if there were trains to get to the mountains. There's also the 30s, so it's the Depression times. If they wanted to ski, it was expensive, so that was another challenge. And also, ski trails are hard to build. You build one ski jump and you have an event, but ski trails, when they did start to get developed, they were hand cleared. It was volunteers, organizers, ski clubs that went out, cut down trees, widened logging roads, and that's how the first ski trails got developed. So in those 1932 Olympics, there was these group of guys from Schenectady that went up. They took a train up, and they didn't have much money. They camped out in the woods, because you could at the time. That's how big of a festival or activity the Olympics were. They were really low key. The opening ceremony was a guy on ski stilts that skied through a big paper circle that said, the third Winter Olympics. That was the opening ceremony. FDR was the governor. He opened it. There was no presidents coming to open up the Olympics. It was really new, really kind of low-key event. So these guys from Schenectady came out. They were camping in the woods. They were watching the Swedish cross-country team practice. They got lost in the woods. They directed them back onto the trails. That's the way things worked there. And then they came back super excited about this new sport of skiing that they discovered, and they wanted to expand on it, make it more popular, started trying it out. They created a club. They went up, and Vincent Schaefer, in between developing technology for creating clouds, was also got his buddy to fly him around in a helicopter to scout out possible locations to develop a ski mountain. His main requirements was something in the mountains that got a lot of snow, and something accessible by train, since that was really the main way of getting around back then. They settled on their top choice was North Creek, which became home to eventually became home of Gore Mountain. And with their club, they came out and started clearing trees, developing trails, and winter of '33 started advertising ski trips by train to North Creek. Ski Bowl Park was what they called it. And they tried 7 weekends in a row. They sent out flyers, they sent out postcards, were advertising trips. 7 weekends in a row, it rained. No ski trips. So when you guys are like crying about tough winters that there's no snow, it's not the first time that has happened. And but they were determined. Next summer they cleared out more trails, kept developing the system, and 1934 the first ski trains showed up to North Creek for what really became the first skiing in downhill skiing in New York State. And that North Creek, super small town even today, but at that time there was there was kind of like the invention of the original Airbnb, but people would show up, the locals would take them in, kids would get sent down to the basement so that paying customers could have rooms and beds. The mothers would cook up food for them. And it's also the way to get to the top was you'd get picked up in a truck. You'd sit down in your truck, put your skis in, get driven to the top, and then ski down. And that's how skiing worked, because there's no lifts. That didn't exist yet. So that was what skiing looked like in 1934. The following year, Vince Schaefer's brother heard about. They developed a tow line in Vermont. Vermont had the very first kind of, it was called a rope tow. They took a car engine, attached the rope to it, pulled onto the rope, and you get to the top of the mountain. So they thought it was a great idea. They set one up in North Creek, and that was the first tow line in New York State. The 1922 Buick is what they used. They parked it at the top, attached the rope, and that was. It really changed things. They came up with a slogan, ride up, ski down, and it became that much more accessible, because before that, if you wanted to ski, like if the trucks weren't available, a lot of people walked. If you couldn't afford to pay for the truck fare, you walked to the top and you ski down. And that's so everything that's happening today with how easy it is with our heated gondolas and bubble chairs, none of that. So skiing kept getting more popular, kept getting developed during that time, because it was still dangerous. Before ski patrol became a thing, Vincent Schaefer's wife, she became his wife, but she really developed what became ski patrol. She was kind of forefront of it. Her and her friends, nurses, volunteers, they went out, kind of attended to everybody that got hurt on the trails, because that was pretty common. Their main thing was that they were really there to help people. They were more to help new skiers, not the competitive skiers. So they kind of had their own teams looking out, but they really made it that much more safe for new skiers to be going out and learning the sport. So that developed as that made skiing a little bit safer, or at least people made the things easier for people. And during that same time in the Catskills, the first they also kind of copied the idea of the ski tow. They started popping up in more places. Simpson Mountain was the first mountain that opened up in the Catskills. It lasted a few years. Then World War II happened. Not as many people available to ski. Some of the resorts started closing down. They weren't resorts, but the mountains with a rope started closing down. Not enough people to help clear the trails. So there was a dip in the sport, but war ends. 10th Mountain Division comes back to the country. They see how many generations ahead the technology has developed in Europe, and they really bring that system all across the U.S. A lot of the mountains in Colorado were developed by 10th Army Division guys. They opened up a number of the mountains all across New York State. They started developing out in western New York, more mountains in the Adirondacks, more mountains in the Catskills started opening up. Then it come 1950s time. 1950, Bel Air opens up. It was New York. Anytime New York, so there's 3 publicly owned mountains in New York: Bel Air, Gore Mountain, and Whiteface. And each time that anytime they wanted to expand it, they had to change the New York State Constitution to kind of allow this access. So it was a pretty big deal from a government standpoint, but there was support for it. They saw the benefits of developing the outdoor recreation in the state, and Bel Air opens up as a publicly run mountain, also with the first chairlift in the U.S. One-person chairlift, creaking up nice and slow. Around the same time, a chairlift gets put at Gore Mountain. I heard from locals it took 22 minutes to ride to the top. They would give ponchos to people because it was so cold. People would wait. They would send ponchos down. People would wait until the ponchos came down from on a chair before getting up, because if you didn't, you would just come out like an icicle. So Bel Air opens up. That really starts developing Catskills even more so. Season pass. One of the other season passes cost $5 at the time. I forgot. That was at Rotterdam Hill. It was $5 for a season pass. So, times have changed a little bit. Then Hunter Mountain opens up by these 2 brothers named Slutsky brothers. They were really determined. They came up with a number of innovative things. Their first attempt at it, they got all these celebrities involved at the time. The mountain went bankrupt. They had to close down, and they started back up with new management. Tried a number of things. One, they tried summer skiing. They covered the mountain in white plastic chips, and people skied down on these white plastic chips. That didn't last too long. A couple years go by, they scrapped that idea. Didn't really take off. But in the late 50s, snowmaking technology comes out. Really expensive in the beginning, really early adoption, but Hunter Mountain becomes the first mountain to have top to bottom snowmaking capabilities. It extends the season. It extends kind of all the benefits that come with it. The sport becomes that much more popular.
Wait, first in America?
Well, first to do top to bottom. So there was other mountains developed using snowmaking,
Yeah.
but Hunter was the first one to have the whole mountain covered with snowmaking capabilities. Yeah. So sport keeps getting more popular. Safety starts getting developed. Waterproof clothing becomes a reality. Prior to that, people would ski with wool sweaters, hats, gloves. Maybe they were using gloves. There was a tip that you put your sweater underneath your flannel jacket. That was kind of like underneath your flannel shirt, because that kept you warmer. But that's basically how people were skiing. So as continues developing, and then the real kind of history of New York skiing gets bookended with the 1980 Olympics. So comparing it 32 Olympics to 1980 Olympics, there was four ski related events in 1932, up to 19 in 1980. Women's events became a reality. It was the first time there was a giant slalom for women. That was for 1980 was also the first time artificial snow was used at an Olympic event. There was a dramatic finish at on this cross country skiing event. That the difference in the finish times was 0.01 seconds. That was kind of the other highlight of the 1980 Olympics besides Miracle on Ice. And and then today we have 46 total mountain kind of resorts, functioning mountains with skiing in New York State, scattered all around. The New York State still operates 3 publicly owned, taxpayer-funded mountains of Gore, Whiteface, and Bel Air. And to quote Warren Miller, I like to end it that the best place to ski is where you're skiing that day.